Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Six Path Weeb. Today, we're exploring a fascinating what-if scenario. What if Naruko had grown up under the guidance of Tsunade? Imagine the training, the lessons, the tough love, and how it might have shaped her into a completely different ninja. Would her strength rival even the greatest Konoha shinobi? How would her personality evolve under Tsunade's mentorship? These are the questions we're going to dive into. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. All content here is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any anime footage used, full credit goes to the original creators and copyright holders. Let's jump in and see how Naruko's story could have taken an entirely new path. Months after Pain's devastating attack on the village, both citizens and ninjas were diligently working to rebuild Konoha. Temporary tents were set up outside the village perimeter while construction teams, including volunteers from other nations, collaborated to restore the buildings and provide essential supplies. Amid the busy scene, someone appeared, rapidly creating hundreds of shadow clones to accelerate the reconstruction. She had spiky blonde hair, tan skin, and 6 distinctive whisker-like marks on her cheeks, 3 on each side. Her eyes, a striking ocean blue, had vertical pupils reminiscent of a fox, and her sharp canines and fingernails gave her a slightly wild but controlled appearance. She wore her familiar orange and black outfit. The villagers, thrilled by the display of skill, cheered enthusiastically, calling out things like, "Our hero has returned," and "Hooray for Naruko." Some even approached her for autographs. Normally, Naruko would have felt embarrassed by such attention, but months of constant praise had made her more focused and determined. "Please, everyone, I'm busy," she explained politely while weaving through the crowd. "I only created the clones to assist while I continue with my own tasks." After her intense confrontation with Pain and a meeting with her father, Naruko decided to locate her father's estate to reclaim what was hers. Thousands of her clones scoured the land, following clues about a house near a mountain. Yet, even after searching the Cage Mountain, she found nothing. Considering her father's unpredictable movements, the house could be anywhere, even across the continent. Shrugging off the thought, she returned her focus to the mission at hand. 3 weeks later. 3 weeks had passed, and the nations were in a state of tension. Although Naruko hadn't been directly informed, she had grown wiser and more observant. At that moment, she was on a large turtle as part of a research mission to study and record local wildlife, a task that left her mildly frustrated. Fortunately, a positive development had occurred beforehand. She had located her father's house roughly 2 weeks prior. It sat atop a mountain, a few miles from the Valley of the End. Naruko climbed the peak using only her hands, treating it as rigorous physical training. Sitting beside a tree to meditate, she reflected on the journey. Flashback, 2 weeks ago. Naruko's clone had reported that her father's house was near the mountain peak. As she climbed, she felt a sense of nostalgia, recalling the Valley of the End where she had experienced her first significant challenge alongside someone she once considered a close friend. Peering over the mountain's edge, she marveled at the location of the house. How someone had managed to transport materials to such a height was a mystery. Just then, a sudden bolt of energy streaked past, brushing her ear. Instinctively, she dodged and accelerated her movements using chakra. Obstacles arose in the form of earth formations, but Naruko skillfully solidified chakra beneath her feet to leap across them. A small whirlwind spun nearby, yet she calmly vaulted over it, continuing toward the house. Approaching the final stretch, she felt a strong force pressing down on her, as if the area itself was challenging her movements. "Interesting," she murmured. "This will be excellent for training." Using careful observation and creativity, she adapted to the unusual conditions. When faced with a formidable rock construct, she analyzed its weakness and struck with her lightning-based techniques. The approach proved successful, scattering the obstacles and allowing her to reach the house safely. Landing on her back with a grin, Naruko exhaled deeply. "That's done," she said, smiling at the culmination of her efforts. This time, she was proven wrong when the structure began to repair itself right before her eyes. "Oh, come on, really," she muttered, recalling what she had heard earlier. Only one of the whirling blood can command the creature. Does that mean only an Uzumaki can take control of the golem? She wondered as the massive figure was fully restored. The boulder-like golem began moving toward the blonde Janan. "Stop," Naruko shouted, causing the golem to hesitate in its step. Frustration bubbled inside her. "I command you to stop," she insisted, but the golem continued forward. Finally, raising her voice with firm resolve, she yelled, "I said stand still." The effect was immediate, the golem halted. "Now, return to where you came from," she instructed. The golem nodded and slowly disassembled, the pieces absorbed into the ground. Once the last fragment vanished, Naruko sank to her knees, relieved that the confrontation was over. After a brief rest, she rose and walked toward the house. At least you can move freely now, she murmured to herself. Yeah, because I just faced a massive structure of rock. I guess determination can push you beyond limits, even against impossible odds, she reflected. When she reached within a few yards of the house, holograms of her mother and father appeared. Naruko stepped back in surprise, even more so when the images vanished. Thinking it might be a genjutsu, she pressed her fingers into the ram seal and muttered, "Kai," sending a pulse of chakra in all directions. She observed as distortions formed around the house, revealing the presence of a protective barrier and the origin of the jutsus. Stepping forward, she reactivated the holograms of her parents. "Hey, Naruko. I see you found the house and overcame the golem. That's your Uzumaki heritage in action," her father said. "I was cautious at first, but you've awakened the lost power of our bloodline." "Wait, bloodline? I have a bloodline?" Naruko asked, curious. "Unfortunately, I don't know the specifics," her mother replied. "All I know is that there was another who shared it. Another Uzumaki with the bloodline. But who could it be? I thought I was the last of our clan. Have you noticed anything unusual about me, Kyubi?" she asked aloud. "Nope, nothing yet," the fox replied. Her father's hologram smiled warmly. "Look at you, grown so fast. You're around 13, maybe 14. I remember when you were just a tiny bundle in my hands." Naruko felt a surge of mixed emotions. Her parents' words reminded her of the responsibilities she would inherit. Clenching her fists, she allowed herself a moment to calm her racing thoughts. Reaching the door, she noticed a seal with the kanji for blood. Glancing at her palm, she saw no remnants of her earlier struggle. The fox had healed her. Pressing her hand against the seal caused the door to glow and unlock. Inside, the house was simple yet welcoming, with a small living area, kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. One bedroom was clearly hers, still awaiting decoration. Inside, she discovered a large collection of scrolls, fuinjutsu, ninjutsu, genjutsu, and even scrolls on taijutsu and kenjutsu. She spent hours in the library, leaving hundreds of shadow clones to study and practice. Survival in the upcoming challenges depended on her mastery of these techniques. As she prepared to leave the house, thoughts of her mysterious bloodline weighed heavily on her mind. Flashback. Naruko glanced around as Kirabai jotted notes in a small notebook. She needed to leave the island and continue her training. This mission is unusual, she thought, organizing wildlife on this island? Sometimes, the village really tests patience. "Yo, 9, let's go handle the beast," a Kumo ninja called. "I've got my own plan," Naruko replied, using a swift body flicker to vanish. She appeared atop a distant peak, her headband tails fluttering in the wind. Focusing her wind chakra, she glided through the air, combining it with lightning chakra to traverse the distance swiftly. Her journey was long and arduous, but she pressed on, mindful of the need to prepare for the greater challenges ahead, including confronting Madara herself. Hours of running tested her stamina, yet she remained determined, taking short meditative breaks to maintain communication with her shadow clones. Eventually, she spotted a cruise ship, perfect for a brief rest. Remaining unseen, she observed the passengers and discreetly assumed a bird form, sending clones to the house to continue her training. After ensuring her cover, she explored the ship, finding simple accommodations and settling in to regain energy. With the Allied Kijis. 2 days later, during a briefing with the Allied Kijis, Tsunade reacted sharply to news of Naruko's solo departure. "She left? Without completing the beast's training?" Kirabai explained calmly, "Hokage-sama, she left on her own accord. Though unprepared for full control, she is determined to face the challenge ahead." "We must locate her immediately," Tsunade instructed, summoning a squad of Anbu. The 5 nations began mobilizing their forces in coordination, fully united against the looming threat. 3 days later. Naruko continued developing a new seal aboard the cruise ship, focused and determined. Observing her surroundings discreetly, she ensured no distractions could interfere with her work. Shadows of her clones assisted in refining the technique, preparing her for the forthcoming confrontation. Encounter with former allies. Naruko sensed the presence of her former teammates. Turning carefully, she saw Madara and Sasuke approaching. Prepared and confident, she readied her newly acquired skills. Observing their movements, she adjusted her stance, elongated blades in hand, ready to face the challenge with precision and control. "Kyuubi, remind me about Uchiha Itachi," she whispered, memories flooding back as she prepared for the imminent encounter. Flashback. Naruko opened the door to the hotel, only to find herself facing a pair of intense, fully awakened Sharingan eyes. The vision shifted, showing Itachi transforming into a flock of crows that dispersed into the sky. One of the crows flew directly toward Naruko, entering her field of vision, and then vanished. "I have entrusted you with a great deal of my knowledge, use it wisely," Itachi's voice echoed, leaving Naruko momentarily speechless. The memory faded to show rain falling gently as Naruko stood alone, contemplating the responsibility that had been placed upon her. She knelt and brushed a stray strand of hair from Itachi's face. "I will honor your guidance, Itachi-san. The knowledge and strength you have shared will help me correct the mistakes of the past," she whispered before rising to her feet. Present moment. Naruko returned to the clearing, her memories slowly settling around her. She noticed Sasuke observing her with curiosity. Before he could speak, Naruko stated calmly, "So you took your brother's eyes." Her tone was more of an observation than a question. "That's a surprising choice, Sasuke," she added, entering her sage mode. Her training allowed her to remain perfectly balanced and focused. Sasuke's gaze remained steady as he shifted his regular Sharingan into his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, a unique blend of both his own and his brother's powers. Meanwhile, Itachi watched silently from a distant tree branch. Finally, the time has come for them to test their abilities. Fate has brought them together for this challenge. Naruko focused, gathering natural energy until her iris glowed a deep orange. Then, in a flash, she moved at incredible speed, surprising both Uchiha. Sasuke raised his Kusanagi to counter one of her attacks, but Naruko's agility allowed her to land a graceful backflip several meters away. Battle progression. The clash continued, with both shinobi demonstrating incredible skill and strategy. Naruko used her chakra tail skillfully to redirect attacks, and Sasuke's clever techniques kept the match tense. Observing from a distance, Madara noted their strength. "These young warriors are remarkable. Soon, the outcome will determine the next stage of my plans," he thought. 2 hours later. The clearing had changed drastically, scorched and reshaped by the intensity of their efforts. Naruko crouched in the center, her chakra forming the recognizable form of the Kyuubi, though controlled and balanced. Her attire showed signs of wear, evidence of the rigorous challenge she had endured. Naruko focused her energy, preparing to seal a disruptive ability. She formed a cross-shaped hand seal and chanted, "Tajuu Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." 1,000 clones of herself appeared, each enveloped in chakra, coordinating to complete the technique. Madara observed carefully, noting her precision and resilience. Despite exhaustion, Naruko pressed on, adapting quickly to his countermeasures. With determination, she completed the seal, despite physical strain and the complexity of the task. Shinobi Central Command. Meanwhile, the 4 Kage convened a council. The Kazekage was absent, leading his own team in the field. "Why are we just waiting here?" the Raikage exclaimed, frustration in his voice. "Our allies are in the midst of action. We should act as well." "For once, I agree," that Tsuchikage said. "We cannot waste time while Madara searches for the lost Kyuubi. We must seize this opportunity and protect our people." The Raikage and the Tsuchikage exchanged thoughtful glances and nodded to one another. The Mizukage exhaled softly, "You both need to calm down. We have important matters to address, and we cannot do that while arguing every few minutes. I understand the eagerness to join the field operations, I feel the same. However, the young ninja is gaining invaluable experience by being out there independently, with everyone depending on her guidance," said the auburn-haired leader, resting her hand on her palm thoughtfully. "And what would you know about leading forces in unfamiliar territory? If I remember correctly, you gained your experience during a civil conflict, and you've only been in this position for a short while," the elder Tsuchikage responded, raising an eyebrow. "3 of us Kages have only held our positions for a few years due to unique circumstances," Tsunade interjected calmly. "We are aware that both you and Raikage Dono have far more experience in leadership. But that is irrelevant here. What matters is how we can support our troops in overcoming the challenges ahead." "You are right, Hokage Dono. As leaders experienced in strategy, our priority is to anticipate the enemy's actions. That is precisely why this war council has been convened," the Mizukage affirmed, lending support to her colleague. The other Kages, though initially reluctant, settled their disagreements. "Good. Now we can begin this meeting," Tsunade said. With a series of hand seals, a holographic map of the elemental nations appeared. "According to our scouts, The Akatsuki base is located here, she explained, pointing to a territory between Taki no Kuni and Ta no Kuni. We will coordinate our troops to encircle the base. The enemy's lower-ranking forces are not a significant threat individually, but intelligence indicates they have been enhanced, making them more challenging than before. The exact details are unclear, so our teams must be prepared for anything, she added. Suddenly, a loud vibration reverberated through the room. The Kijis glanced at their teacups, all of which cracked simultaneously and then shattered, spilling their contents across the table. Moments later, the air above the desk rippled with energy, signaling the arrival of someone formidable. Madara appeared, exuding a powerful presence that caused the four Kijis to tense instinctively. This energy is even stronger than the last time, murmured the Sandai mate Tsuchikage under her breath. Where is she? The figure demanded, voice commanding and intense. Tsunade stammered, who are you referring to? We are unsure whom you mean, replied the Reikage, striving to remain composed. Do not withhold information. The force of the presence pressed the Kijis against the walls. Oonoki winced at the impact, while the Reikage remained steady, his strength protecting him. The Mizukage slid smoothly to the floor, her energy controlled but immense. Tsunade, restrained by an unseen force, met the piercing gaze of the Sharingan and Rinnegan. Tell me where you have hidden Uzumaki Naruko, the figure demanded. A different timeline, the Second Ninja World War. The battlefield was quiet, dust rising from the first skirmishes of the war. Amid the chaos, a group of Jonin discovered a young girl unconscious just beyond Kumo's border. Sir, we found this child a few miles away, near our borders, the lead Jonin reported, carefully placing her on a stretcher. The Nidaime Hokage, Senju Tobirama, observed thoughtfully. With hair as white as his armor and eyes as sharp as his gaze, he assessed the child. She appears very young, yet there is potential here. The orphanage is not suitable, now is the time to determine her abilities. Wait until she awakens to gauge her awareness. For now, escort her to the hospital for evaluation, he instructed. Understood. The Jonin responded, carrying the girl gently toward the medical facility. Tobirama remained, quietly considering the potential hidden within her. Later, Hiruzen Sarutobi entered the office. Mission accomplished, Tobirama-sensei, he reported. Excellent. How challenging was it to navigate Iwa's defenses alone? Tobirama asked. At first, it seemed daunting, Hiruzen admitted, but once I observed their patrol patterns, it became manageable. The two shared a brief moment of amusement. Very good. It seems you are ready to take on your own team soon, Tobirama said, approvingly. Hiruzen nodded, indeed. It is time to pass on knowledge. Perhaps they will surpass us one day. Konoha Hospital, 3 days later. Beep beep. Where am I? A small, uncertain voice wondered. Beep beep. What is this sound? She thought, frowning. Beep beep beep. What's happening? A concerned voice called. I'm not sure. Her heartbeat seems to be increasing, replied another. Who are these people? Are they here to help me? Naruko wondered, eyes widening as she tried to make sense of the situation. Well, don't just stand there, help her, someone said urgently. Naruko's eyes snapped open, the bright light making her wince. Please. Don't touch me, she said softly, her voice a little hoarse. She's awake, a female nurse stammered. Her short, light blue hair framed her face, and her light purple eyes reflected concern. She wore the standard nursing outfit, and her posture suggested she carried herself with confidence. But she was supposed to rest for at least another week, the second nurse remarked. She had long brown hair and dark green eyes. Her outfit was similar, and her calm, professional demeanor indicated years of nursing experience. Naruko blinked, confused. What do you mean? Where am I? In the village hidden in the leaves, the Nidaime Hokage replied, entering the room. Naruko looked toward the doorway, her eyes widening. The presence of the Hokage made her feel uneasy. Am I okay? She asked nervously. The nurses and the Hokage exchanged puzzled glances. Naruko closed her eyes tightly, trying to focus. Where are you? She thought, searching for her inner energy. When no answer came, she opened her eyes again. What's wrong, young one? The Hokage asked gently. Naruko glared slightly. I am not a child, she said firmly. The brown-haired nurse handed her a small mirror. Naruko gasped as she saw her reflection. I look so young, she whispered, astonished at her smaller form. Memories began to surface, flashes of her last mission and her friends. She paused, taking a steadying breath. Her eyes ached as she recalled moments of struggle, her emotions swirling. The purple-eyed nurse stepped closer. "Are your eyes hurting?" she asked with concern. "They feel strange," Naruko admitted. The Hokage moved closer, his expression serious. "Let me see them," he said. Naruko rubbed her eyes for a few moments before the discomfort began to ease. Slowly, she lifted the mirror to her face. Taking a deep breath, she opened her eyes fully. The first thing she noticed was a ripple-like pattern in her pupils, surrounded by a light purple iris. "Ah! That explains it," she murmured. "I have the Rinnegan." Naruko sat in a classroom at the Academy for Ninjas in Training, a week after resting in the infirmary. Naturally, she had been questioned by the second Hokage about where she had come from, but she feigned ignorance regarding her origins. Truthfully, she had no clear idea how she had arrived in this time. Even worse, she now had to attend the academy again. Naruko wasn't particularly fond of school, and history had always been her most challenging subject, far worse than mathematics. Being thrust into this time period only compounded her frustration. "I dislike history, I really dislike it," she muttered silently, until a sudden realization struck her. "Wait a minute. I am part of history." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears at the thought. She took a deep breath to steady herself as the sensei entered the classroom and began writing on the board. Naruko had met him briefly a few days ago when he had visited her in the infirmary, shortly after the Hokage spoke to her. There had been no discussion about her lineage, as no one, besides Naruko herself, had any inkling of her origins. The sensei was a young jonin, wearing a standard flak jacket. His black hair was neat, and his expression serious, though it softened slightly when he smiled at the class. "My name is Uchu Ryoko. As you know, we are facing challenges with neighboring nations, but Konoha has endured many trials before, and I have no doubt we will overcome this one as well," he announced, raising his fist with determination. The students, inspired, echoed his gesture, and even Naruko lifted her own fist in solidarity, feeling her sense of national pride remain undiminished despite the time shift. "Now, let's begin with introductions," Ryoko continued, pointing toward Naruko. "You didn't tell me your name when we met in the infirmary, so please introduce yourself now." Naruko stood. "Hello, everyone. My name is Uzumaki Naruko. I don't know exactly where I came from, but I was found about 15 miles outside of Hai no Kuni. I don't know my parents, but all they left me was my name." She offered half the truth, keeping the rest to herself. Ryoko raised a hand to stop her. "That's enough, child. I only needed your name." He studied her thoughtfully, as if the name sounded familiar, though he couldn't quite place it. He then moved on, inviting each student to introduce themselves. As Naruko sat down, she noticed a blonde girl staring at her. Something about her seemed familiar. Their eyes met, blue to hazel, and Naruko quickly turned her gaze out the window, feeling a flicker of recognition. Listening to the other students introduce themselves, her mind drifted to thoughts of her own abilities and the mysterious Rinnegan she possessed, as well as the Kyuubi's unusual absence. She recalled reading her mother's journal, which hinted that this unique power appeared only in select members of the Uzumaki clan. Could Nagato have been an Uzumaki? And what exactly happened to the Kyuubi? She wondered, before being pulled back to the present by the next student's introduction. "My name is Senju Tsunade," the young girl said, returning to her seat. Naruko recognized her instantly. This was a much younger version of Tsunade, with short, light blonde hair tied in a small ponytail, wearing a simple gray shirt and dark green pants. Her hazel eyes radiated both the warmth of a family life and a hint of curiosity about Naruko. Naruko shook her head, trying to focus. Witnessing the early years of someone she had come to admire filled her with both nostalgia and awe. Next came Jiraiya, appearing mostly as she remembered him, except without the red markings on his cheeks. Naruko smiled softly, recalling the stories of the legendary Sannin. Then Orochimaru introduced himself, polite and surprisingly gentle, which made Naruko frown in skepticism. Seeing these figures as children reinforced that she truly had traveled back in time. "All right, class, that's enough for today," Ryoko said, dismissing them. "Tomorrow, we will begin your training in earnest. This war requires skilled ninjas, and it is my job to prepare you." Naruko left the classroom with a thoughtful expression. Her inner fox companion had been silent since arriving in this time. "Hey, are you in there?" she called in her mind, but there was no response. She resolved to address it later. For now, Naruko needed a place to stay. She couldn't remain in the infirmary indefinitely, no matter how kind the nurses were. She made her way to the Hokage Tower, recalling that her memories and skills from the future remained intact. This realization filled her with excitement. She wouldn't be starting from scratch in her training. Entering the office, Naruko greeted the young Tobirama with a wide grin. "Hello there." Tobirama looked surprised. Hiruzen, seated nearby, chuckled at her exuberance. "It seems she is more spirited than I expected," Hiruzen said. Naruko's grin widened as she recognized the young sage before her. "Gigi," she thought. "Naruko-kun, what have I told you about calling me that?" "I'm not that old yet," Tobirama replied, resting his chin on his hand. "Well, compared to me, you're pretty old," she teased lightly. "We have about a 25-year gap, unless you aren't 30 like you said." Hiruzen chuckled. "Are you sure you're only 5? "Oh, if only they knew," Naruko thought, smiling even wider. Tobirama sighed. "Forget about age for now. Let me introduce you. This is Sarutobi Hiruzen. My brother and I have taught him all he knows. Hiruzen, this is Uzumaki Naruko, the child I mentioned." Hiruzen regarded her thoughtfully. "Naruko-kun, do you know anything about Uzumaki Mito?" Naruko looked confused. "No, I don't." "Never mind," Hiruzen said with a smile, letting the question go. Tobirama, seeing her confusion, shifted the topic. "So, Naruko-kun, what brings you here?" "I don't have a place to stay," she said simply. "I came to request an apartment for myself." The two adults exchanged a glance and began to laugh, which slightly annoyed Naruko. "This isn't funny," she said, a silvery aura of chakra flickering faintly around her in exasperation. Tobirama raised a hand. "Calm down, Naruko-kun. We just find it amusing that someone your age wants to live alone. But don't worry, you won't be on your own." Naruko chuckled nervously. "Yeah, I suppose that is awkward." Tobirama smiled. "It will just be me, my nephew, his wife, and my grandniece." Before Naruko could respond, a young Tsunade ran into the office and leapt onto Tobirama's lap. "Oji-san," she exclaimed, hugging him tightly. Tobirama chuckled. "Su-chan, how was your first day at the academy?" "Nothing too exciting, though there was a blonde girl with an interesting name. Uzumaki, I think?" she murmured. Naruko realized immediately that she was the one Tsunade had seen. Tsunade's eyes widened in surprise. "What are you doing here?" she asked, looking at Naruko with curiosity and recognition. Naruko smiled, glancing at Tobirama for support. "Well, there's a funny story about that." "Really? I'd love to hear it," Tsunade said innocently. "Well, you see, Naruko-kun is going to be staying with us," Tobirama announced. "Why?" Tsunade exclaimed, her voice filled with playful outrage. "I haven't signed the paper yet," Naruko quickly added. "Good," Tsunade said with a grin. "It's not that simple, Su-chan. I want Naruko to have a family, and I don't want you to feel too lonely in the house," Tobirama said gently. "I'm not alone, I have To-san and Ka-chan," she protested softly. "And besides, she could live with Mito-san. She's an Uzumaki," Naruko added, glancing at her granduncle. "That won't work, Su-chan. Naruko doesn't know Mito-san or her family," he explained. Hiruzen, who had been quietly observing, realized he needed to intervene before the discussion became tense. "How about I take Naruko into my home?" he suggested, interrupting the conversation. All eyes turned to Sarutobi. "Really, Sarutobi-san?" Naruko asked, hope brightening her face. He nodded reassuringly. "Of course. Just because I'm young doesn't mean I can't care for a child. After the loss of her parents in the previous conflict, I can empathize with this little one," he said, reaching to ruffle Naruko's hair. The blonde squirmed away but smiled at Tobirama. "I like that idea. Please, may I?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. The Nidaime closed his eyes and shook his head, prompting Naruko and Tobirama to exchange a knowing glance. When he reopened his eyes, the pair of pleading puppy dog expressions, hazel and ocean blue, were fixed on him. "Oh no, my only weakness," he thought, surrendering with a soft sigh. The two cheered, and although they were too far apart for a high five, their joy was infectious. Sarutobi chuckled, reflecting on how lively Naruko had been only moments ago. Such a vibrant presence. And that unusual dujutsu. I must learn more about it, he thought as Tobirama prepared the necessary paperwork, which everyone signed. Streets of Konoha. Naruko walked through the village alongside Sarutobi, her eyes wide with wonder. Despite being in a past era, she marveled at the bustling streets, noting the differences from her own timeline. Her thoughts drifted to the fox spirit. Does its energy or consciousness also exist here? Or is it different? She wondered. When are we going to your home? Naruko asked, glancing at Sarutobi. He smiled. We're already here, he said, approaching a modest 2-story house. I moved from a larger compound because even it felt too big for one person, he explained as he opened the door. The home was warm and inviting, a cozy living room, a spacious kitchen with an island dining table, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a study. Isn't this kind of the same thing? Naruko asked, yawning. You moved out of one large home just to move into another. Sarutobi went to the kitchen for water. I suppose you're right. Yet again, you surprise me, he said, returning to find Naruko asleep on the couch. He gently covered her with a spare blanket, stroking her hair before heading upstairs to prepare the guest room for his new little ward. Naruko's mindscape. As Naruko slept, she wandered through her mindscape, a rare chance to explore her inner world. She gazed at her reflection, now a 17-year-old, taller with more developed hands. Her eyes glimmered with the Rinnegan, an unsettling yet intriguing sight. Her chakra pathways glowed silver with hints of blue. I don't remember my energy being this color. But somehow it feels right, she thought. Approaching a familiar cage, she sensed the presence of the fox, though something felt different. As she stepped closer, a strange trembling shook the ground. Gradually, the fox's form seemed to vanish, leaving only darkness. Naruko froze, speechless. Naruko. Is that you? A voice called, seeming to come from everywhere at once. Naruko quickly shifted the scenery, creating a sunlit clearing. She turned to see a woman with striking red hair. Mother? She thought, recognizing her immediately. How did you enter my mind? What happened to the fox's energy? And why do I have these eyes? Naruko asked, astonished. Kushina approached, smiling softly. One question at a time, she said, embracing Naruko gently. At first, Naruko relaxed, but then frustration bubbled up. Do you know what life has been like for me? You left me alone in the village. It's been so hard. Tears welled in Kushina's eyes, her voice firm yet caring. You think leaving was easy? I never wanted to leave you alone. I did everything I could to protect you, even from afar. Naruko's eyes glimmered with determination as she activated her Rinnegan, responding to the intensity of her emotions. Kushina smiled, pride evident in her expression. It seems you've inherited our clan's strength. Let's see what you can do with these eyes. Training begins. After a brief sparring session, Kushina gently shook her head. You did well, but your mastery of these abilities is still developing. I had already trained extensively by this age. Naruko, exhausted yet curious, asked, if that's true, how do I use these abilities fully? And what happened to the fox's energy? Kushina explained carefully, these eyes are rare, appearing in only a few Uzumaki every 2 centuries. You were destined for this. The fox's energy has merged with your own, but the color shift to silver is unique to you. Naruko reflected on this as trees and foliage returned to the clearing. So, I'm still your child, even here? Technically yes, though in this timeline, our ages differ, Kushina replied with a gentle smile. Now rest, Naruko. Your mind and body both need it. We will continue our training soon. Real world, the next day. Naruko woke up with a yawn, momentarily forgetting about the adventure of the previous day, as the delicious aroma of breakfast filled the room. She looked around and realized she was in a simple, cozy room, lying on a bed far larger than herself. She glanced down and noticed she was still wearing the same clothes as yesterday, a pair of dark gray training sweats and a fitted, sleeveless light gray shirt. Her stomach rumbled, prompting her to quickly take a refreshing bath and change into her training attire. Though the clothes felt slightly loose, she shrugged it off and headed downstairs. Thinking mischievously about a playful trick, Naruko quietly lowered her chakra and crept toward Hiruzen Sarutobi. Good morning, Naruko. I see your energy has returned after your nap, the brown-haired man said, turning and lightly tapping her on the head with a spatula. Ouch, Naruko said, rubbing her head with a small frown. Why'd you do that? Hiruzen smiled warmly at her. Nice try, Naruko, but I won't be fooled. Unlike some others, I'm prepared for your little surprises, he chuckled, turning back to the cooking breakfast. Naruko grumbled but quickly moved to the dining table. So, what's the plan for today? She asked as a plate of bacon and eggs was set before her. Well, you'll be heading to the academy, and I have preparations for a mission, Hiruzen replied, just as a messenger hawk tapped at the kitchen window. Naruko groaned, recalling she had to attend school. She finished her breakfast swiftly and left the house, making her way to the village's clan district. Despite Hiruzen being the last of his line, the Sarutobi clan was still recognized for the strength and legacy he carried. Luckily, she had a little time before school started. Smirking, Naruko used a swift sunshine technique to vanish from sight. Unbeknownst to her, Hiruzen had been observing Naruko from the window, quietly impressed by her control of chakra at such a young age. A child shouldn't be able to use that technique, let alone manage chakra so precisely. Who exactly are you, Uzumaki Naruko? He thought. Training Ground 7. Naruko arrived at the training ground, which appeared mostly empty. One young Orochimaru was seen focused on practicing with a log. Naruko tried to maintain a neutral expression, but a small smirk crept onto her face. Orochimaru turned around. Oh. I didn't realize I had company. You must be the Uzumaki kid. It's a pleasure to meet you, he said, extending a hand. Naruko considered ignoring him but had a sudden realization. Maybe she could influence Orochimaru to become a positive force rather than a mischievous one. Smiling, she shook his hand firmly. I'm Naruko Uzumaki. It's a pleasure to meet you as well. Though dressed in a formal kimono, Orochimaru was practicing outdoors with dedication. So, are you here to observe, or would you like a friendly sparring match to test skills? He asked, bouncing lightly on the balls of his feet in a ready stance. Naruko studied him carefully, considering his movements. She adopted a steady stance, waiting for him to make the first move. Orochimaru charged, and she deftly sidestepped his initial attempt, narrowly avoiding a strike. Quickly regaining balance, Naruko used chakra to propel herself back, landing gracefully. Orochimaru continued his playful assault, which Naruko skillfully blocked or avoided. After a few minutes, Orochimaru used a hand seal to create 3 identical copies of himself. Let's see how you handle this, he said. Naruko allowed her Rinnegan to flash briefly, identifying the real Orochimaru among the copies. She moved decisively, sending a gentle yet precise strike toward the correct target, knocking him lightly to the ground while the clones vanished. My Rinnegan makes it easier to discern the real from the copies, she thought, offering a hand to help him up. Orochimaru laughed. No apology needed. This just shows I have more to learn about taijutsu and agility, he said, taking her hand. And I need to anticipate your moves better. They both laughed before Orochimaru straightened his kimono. I'd better head to the academy before being late. See you later, Naruko. Naruko looked at herself and realized her attire was only slightly dusty from the training, and she felt satisfied with her morning exercise. 10 minutes later. Naruko wandered around the village, heading toward her favorite spot. Suddenly, she remembered something important. The Ichiraku ramen stand wasn't open yet. Where is it? She thought anxiously. She saw a young boy walking with his father to school, hearing, "Are you ready for school, Tucci?" And the boy replying, "Yes, father." Naruko sighed, realizing she would have to wait before enjoying her favorite ramen. Finally arriving at the academy, she entered her classroom and rested her head on her desk with a soft thud. A few students, including Tsunade, noticed but didn't know the reason for her exhaustion. A hand gently touched her shoulder, and she looked up to see Orochimaru smiling. You should be proud of your performance today. You did very well, he said cheerfully. Naruko returned the smile. I suppose I got lucky this time, she said lightly, teasing. Before long, a commotion erupted as Jiraiya made an exaggerated entrance, tripping and creating a dramatic display across the floor. Naruko watched in amusement as Tsunade reacted with frustration, and the classroom quickly filled with laughter. Orochimaru leaned toward Naruko and whispered, "The year has just started, but I can already tell you have a knack for inspiring confidence in others." Naruko smiled softly. Even the quietest students can become remarkable with encouragement, she replied, feeling proud of the supportive atmosphere in the room. Jiraiya's expression brightened after Naruko's gentle words, ready to face the day with newfound confidence. Ryoko, observing quietly, thought to herself, Naruko truly has a talent for bringing out the best in others. Leadership potential, perhaps. As the teacher called the class to attention, Naruko settled into her seat, confident that today would be filled with growth, learning, and a little adventure. 1 year later. Currently, the blonde girl was skillfully evading the attacks of 3 students, Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru. Each of the students wore dark gray training pants. Naruko wore a deep orange shirt, Tsunade a dark green blouse, Jiraiya a deep red shirt, and Orochimaru a dark blue shirt. The colors had a purpose. Naruko dodged another strike and swiftly kicked Jiraiya in the stomach. Red. Ryoko called out. Naruko exhaled softly, charging forward alongside her teammates. Tsunade was the first to engage, sending a precise punch toward Jiraiya. Using a quick hand seal, Jiraiya transformed into a wooden log just in time. Tsunade's punch struck the log, leaving it dented and cracked. Jiraiya reappeared in the air behind Orochimaru, aiming a kick at her head. Orochimaru used her agility to duck and twist, catching Jiraiya's other foot and gently bringing her down onto the ground. Before Orochimaru could counter, Naruko intercepted another punch meant for her, showcasing her protective instincts. Excellent work defending your teammate. Their instructor praised from the sidelines. Naruko barely had time to acknowledge the compliment before Jiraiya tossed her over his shoulder, attempting a sweeping move on Orochimaru. Tsunade paused mid-strike as Ryoko's voice rang out, "Blue." It was Orochimaru's turn to evade her classmates. She pushed off the ground, forming a complex hand seal. Soon, 8 clones appeared around her. "Which one is the real me?" she asked playfully. Jiraiya and Tsunade glanced toward Naruko, but she had already disappeared from view. Using her chakra, Naruko propelled herself into the air to avoid detection, quietly smirking. "Just because these aren't ordinary clones doesn't mean you can fool me," she whispered, deactivating her advanced Rinnegan. "Attack the one on the far right," she commanded her teammates as she landed on the far left, channeling sparks of electricity through her hands to dismantle the Earth clones. Ryoko, observing from the sidelines, smiled proudly. Only the most dedicated students had persisted under such intense training. "It's remarkable," he thought. "These 4 are truly exceptional." He called out again, "Green," noticing Tsunade hesitating to defend herself. After several minutes of precise maneuvers, Ryoko ended the session. "Truly impressive. You 4 have shown remarkable skill. Tsunade, your focus has strengthened immensely. Jiraiya, your growth this year has been inspiring. Orochimaru, your ingenuity is unmatched. And Naruko, you've shown strategic thinking and adaptability beyond your years. I would pass each of you if I could now." "What do you mean, sensei?" Tsunade asked, curious. "Of course you could pass us, you're far beyond ordinary students," Jiraiya replied proudly. "Interestingly, I agree with him," Orochimaru added. Naruko rolled her eyes with a small smile. "I'm just glad my efforts are noticed." Ryoko shook his head, exhaling. "Graduation will come only after you pass the final test in a few years. Also, no 4-person team has ever been this formidable, so your paths will diverge eventually." A voice interrupted, "Oh, I beg to differ." "Hokage-sama." Ryoko turned in surprise. Hiruzen Sarutobi approached, smiling kindly. "I came to check on my grandniece and her friends. I've decided to personally take you 4 as my students. You will grow to become legends." Naruko cheered, tossing her dark orange shirt into the air before sprinting toward Hiruzen with excitement. Ryoko stared in surprise. "Wait, Naruko, how much does your shirt weigh?" 15 pounds, like everyone else's," she admitted. Ryoko raised an eyebrow. 15 pounds on a small frame? That could have been dangerous. Naruko, at 6 years old, was already exceptionally strong and agile, balancing lean muscle with just the right energy reserves from her diet and training. Jiraiya and Orochimaru proudly displayed their own strength, tossing their weighted shirts aside. Tsunade crossed her arms. "I only have 25 pounds. I'm not crazy like the others," she said firmly. Ryoko sighed. "Calm down, you 4. You may be children, but your skill rivals much older ninjas. That's what makes you exceptional." Naruko smiled confidently. "We've trained hard. We're ready for anything." Ryoko nodded, studying Naruko closely. "Indeed. You are unique, even among these extraordinary students. Your dedication, meditation, and consistent training show a resolve that is rare for your age." Naruko lifted her head, a determined smirk on her face. "Sensei, let's put that training to the test. I'm ready to show you just how far I've come." Omake, first day of training. Naruko balanced a 15-pound boulder on her shoulders while crossing a bridge of earth suspended above water, with simulated obstacles waiting below. Ryoko, perched on top of the boulder, laughed warmly. "Do you feel challenged yet, Naruko? Or should I increase the difficulty?" Naruko stepped carefully, speaking between breaths. "Why am I the only one with the bridge and all these obstacles? This seems extreme." Ryoko chuckled. It's a test of focus and resilience. You'll see how far you've grown. A playful kunai dropped nearby, grazing her cheek, followed by a light whip-like obstacle nudging her from behind. Naruko quickened her pace, determination blazing in her eyes. This is intense. But I can handle it. Dear YouTube family. This is all for now. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel to stay updated with more content. Thank you for your support and for being part of this journey. Regards. 6 Path Weeb.